today. So today, I wanted to touch base on some of the things that I went through when I first traveled to Nicaragua. Some of the questions that I had that I ended up searching and Googling and researching, and some of them made me a little stressed out. And in the end, it all ended up being very simple and very easy. And the overall experience is probably one of the simplest places to travel to internationally, in my opinion. And these tips are mainly going to apply to the US and Canada because that's what I'm most familiar with. Now, the visa process for Nicaragua, and probably Central America, but we'll say Nicaragua because that's where I went to. I don't want to assume that everything's identical in every surrounding country in that little group of countries. The times I've gone, at some point, the stewardess will hand out the visa applications or the visa cards. There's nothing daunting about them. They have very, very basic questions. Everything that you want to write on it is going to be information from your airline ticket or from your ID, and a couple of questions, yes, no, reason for visit, yada, yada, yada. It's in English and Spanish, so you don't have to worry about it. If you don't speak English or Spanish, then it's a little different. But they give it on the plane. The reason they give it to you on the plane is because the process when you get off the plane, they kind of rush you through it. But it's very simple. I didn't have a pencil. Literally didn't have a pencil or a pen when I was flying. I thought I was able to fill that out like at the airport comfortably. It was a whole thing, and the staff would not give me a pen. I had to beg this one person to give me a pen, and she stood over me while I filled it out. So as silly as it seems, I just thought we could go fill it out on some kind of counter, almost like a bank. I hadn't really flown internationally in my life before I went to Nicaragua. So a lot of these experiences to me are limited to just traveling to Central America. It's a $10 fee. I paid it in cash. I don't recall if you can pay it with a card. I imagine you could, but I always pay in cash because there was a debate when I first went whether you could pay with a card or not. So I just kept paying cash ever since. That means $10. You give them a 10, they give you the visa. You fill out the sheet on the plane or right after, whatever. And as you're onboarding the plane, there's someone at the end of the hallway in the Managua airport that's going to ask you for it. And you give it to them, and then they just scribble a signature on it. You take the visa, then you walk over and get in line to go through customs, which is pretty chill in Nicaragua. It can get packed if you go on the wrong day, right? Only one time have I gone where it was super packed and it took almost 2 hours to get out. But every other time I've gone, I've got off the plane, I'm on the street in Nicaragua in like 10 minutes. You get in line, they call you up, you tell them where you're gonna stay. It's more for emergencies, right? One, if you do anything wrong, I imagine you're not gonna do that when you visit, but they have someone or somewhere to contact you at. They need to know where you are, right? No one's monitoring you, but they just need to know where you are. You get off the plane, and hopefully you've already filled out the visa card. It asks things like, have you been to a country that had dengue? If you have been there, how long has it been since you came back? How much cash do you have with you? Really, it just says that you have more than the 10,000 or whatever the limit is. There's a lot of things they tell you when you research that you're gonna ask you for, and it doesn't really happen. They say you have to have proof of return. Theoretically, legally, you're supposed to have it to enter. They need proof you're gonna leave. The card also asks you, are declaring anything, what medications you're bringing with you. They don't really check any of that. The paper, someone copies the name into the system, and then they stamp it, and you get out of there. Give them $10, they stamp it. You have to look into this camera, take a picture, and that's it. It's simple. There's nothing to be intimidated about. It's real laid back, So, and it's a small airport. You walk out of the customs area where you have to check in to get out of the airport. Then you walk into the lobby, and then you can either rent a car if you want to or not, and then you're in the street. Like, there's no walking through or shuttles or all these things like huge US airports where you're basically small cities. This is very small airplane. So after you get through the customs and they stamp your visa, you're good. The visa's good for 90 days. You can renew it up to 6 months in total. If you're going for a couple weeks vacation, 90 days is more than enough. You don't even have to think about it. But if you're trying to stretch it into like a 6-month stay, you have to go to the embassy and they'll tell you what to do. You fill out another paper and then you pay $25 or something like that. But I haven't had to do that yet, so prices may vary, right? A lot of the laws and things you look up online of Nicaragua and some of the Central American countries are outdated. They've either lowered or raised some of the prices or even eliminated some requirements or added some new requirements. And sometimes you only find out about them in person. So that's the only part that can be a pain in the butt. But as far as buying a ticket, flying down there, paying the $10 visa, filling it out and hanging out, that's it. There is no special requirements, no special anything. You just fly in and fly out. There's no waiting for a visa. You don't apply for it and wait. You just fill it out. It gets stamped on the spot, and now you have a visa for 90 days. Now, renting a car, it's very simple as well. They're partnered somehow with every budget carrier that have in the US. They have Avis and Penny Car and Budget and Enterprise. I use my debit card, and then I just take out a wad of cash. You can pay with US dollars. It complicates things with change sometimes, but and you just pay, I'll convert the cash at the airport or locally or whatever, or you can just withdraw money normally there, and it doesn't affect anything. The ATM has cash US dollars and it has cash local Cordobas. The issue is Cordobas for the same amount are significantly more bills, you know what I mean? So you could go, depending on how busy the area is, what day of the week, you can go to an ATM and it just doesn't have enough money to give you. You can make your entire stay around places that'll take debit card, but a lot of the experience is getting into the local scene, in my opinion. So having cash is always useful. Like, you're not gonna go to the local mercado, in the Oriental, or although there are some people that do, like on their phone, but you're not gonna go to these local, like, middle of nowhere markets where are intended for local people to have the bottom dollar prices that they can all afford, and ask them, do you take Square? Do you take Google Pay? Do you take Apple Pay? They'll just, like, politely laugh at you and say, no, we only take cash. So keep that in mind. Back to the whole rental car thing. I was getting a little sidetracked there. A US and Canadian license is more than enough. They look at it, they copy it, they write down all the stuff on it, and then you pay a deposit. If you're renting a car, everything you need to legally drive is in the vehicle, so you don't have to think about it. You get the key and you get in it, and there's nothing special, nothing different than here in America. You just give them, they just give you the key and you take the car. So when you go to the counter right before you walk out of the airport in Managua, there's just 3 people and all the rental signs are behind them. So obviously they don't work for every company. They just can sell or rent third party of every rental company, right? So that makes it easier to if you want to use your own account, rental points, or if your account allows you to get rewards or whatever, you can just say, I want to get an Avis, I want to get an Enterprise, I want to get a budget or whatever. You can also rent motorcycles, and you go and you just say, I want to rent a bike, and they rent it to you and you just drive away. I mean, you're not gonna rent a Hayabusa, right? All their bikes are usually the bikes that they use locally, because everyone's trying to save money. They have some off brands of motorcycles I've never even heard of till I got there. I noticed that a lot of Central American countries have deals with other manufacturers that we don't have in the US. And sometimes the same manufacturers we have in the US provide specific bikes just for their market, something lower cost, lower power, very stripped down. It's the best of both worlds, because it allows the local residents to buy something nice without having to pay $15,000 for a 230 horsepower turbo motorcycle. Not necessary there. Plus, people are just trying to get something quality while being affordable. So aside from renting a car or a bike, they have taxis, and they have like official local taxis. They have an app called indrive, which works identical to Uber. Even the interface is very, very almost copy and pasted with their own colors, In my experience, I couldn't really research the app too much outside of the US before I got there, because the app just kept telling me I can't get it in this country. So when I landed at the airport, I downloaded it, and then I just made the account. Something that's not often discussed is not everybody has a way to receive digital payments. A lot of people just prefer cash, because a lot of places they go to don't take card, even if they do have a bank. The indrive app could be, if you're not a negotiator, it can be a little like intimidating, only because there's a window of drivers, right? You'll see drivers just like you do in Uber all over the place. If you change it from like XL to luxury, whatever, premium, it does very little to change the experience, because there's not that many different cars. So what we consider a premium vehicle, for them they don't even offer. And then what we consider an entry-level taxi or Uber, it's a mid-grade card for them. You know what I mean? So, which is fine. I mean, like the one mistake people make, which is ridiculous to me, I never got it, is if you go to another country and you expect everything to be exactly the same. If that's the case, why even go anywhere, right? So the indrive app, you have to put a general distance. That's where it gets a little annoying. Addresses in Nicaragua aren't like the US. It'll just say like, you'll look up an address and it'll be 7 sentences, because it's basically instructions, right? Luckily, the map system is well-rounded and pretty up-to-date. So if you find on the map what you want, drop the pin, and then you could do the distance, and then the app will generate a price. The reason I say about if you're not a negotiator is because the price, you have a certain window of time, is you to accept the price or the driver to accept the price, because you can negotiate it, right? So what I noticed was every single time the driver has it at max, and then I would put it at the lowest, and then they would just bring me another price significantly lower, and I would just accept that. But another thing that I noticed was sometimes they will start dropping the price without you doing anything if there's tons of drivers in the area, right? Because they're all competing for the same business. It's the most expensive option to the locals, but no matter what you do, it's incredibly cheap for anyone coming from the US or Canada. From the airport to my house in Veracruz, which is kilometro 14, kilometer 14, and towards Masaya, like between Masaya and Managua, you know, depending, it's just like Uber. It has an algorithm to determine how much the price should be. So when I got there in the middle of the afternoon and on a busy day, I paid $7.80 to go from the airport to the house, right, in a private taxi. That was perfect. I've made the same trip for $14, $16, depending on when you go. If there's not enough people, if it's super early or super late, it'll be more, you know what I mean? Like, but even then, it's a pretty long distance, which in the US would be $85 probably, and I just paid them $8, you know what I mean? So you can even pay even less, because the indrive app lets you get motorcycle drivers. You can get if you're willing to hop on with a stranger and, you know, get on their bike. If you're by yourself, you could pay, you know, 30-40% less to jump on the back of someone's motorcycle, right? Everything's a short distance. It seems like forever because there's tons of traffic, and there's only 2 or 3 main roads you can take unless you know the area. Like, it'll be like 9-kilometer drive, which is, you know, 5-6 miles or whatever. It'll be like 38 minutes, right? So keep that in mind. Always give yourself an hour between places. You can also flag down a taxi driver, old school style, like, you know, whistle, whatever. They can charge more, they can charge less. Something that people don't like to admit, but it's just the facts of life. It's one of those things. You just deal with it because you're experiencing in another country, you know what I mean? And we usually have better means or resources, so you kind of just deal with it. If you don't have don't want to use the indrive app, a driver will roll up to you if you flag them down, a taxi driver. A lot of the long-term drivers, you get 50-50. You get a driver who's done it for so long, he just charges you the fee and whatever the price is. He's not worried about who you are, and some people take pride in it and their reputation and all that. Then you have the other half, which doesn't make the person any worse, but they'll do a little like, okay, this guy is a foreigner, so I could charge him a little bit more. Some people go overboard. I just said no thanks, you know. And then the very next driver, he uses a little markup. So you gotta be careful sometimes. If you just flag down a taxi driver, they'll price you, not the trip. You know what I mean? Yeah, so indrive app, great app, functions the same. Just have cash, local cash. It makes it a lot easier because you'll get a lot of I don't have change for that, which they might, but it's just. Sometimes the change it's not that they're trying to scam you out of some change for an extra tip. It's that $1 American is worth roughly 36 to 38. You know, it fluctuates a little bit, but local Cordobas. So if you want 40 cents back, that's like, you know, $20 for their money or $15. So, you know, if you're giving people 40 cents back every time, you'd have to carry around wads of cash for the locals. I mean, for people like who are paying in dollars, I mean, it's super inconvenient to have to break a US bill with local dollars. So try to get local cash at the airport, or you can just withdraw it from an ATM, you know, no big deal. And you pay them at the end, and they're usually cool. You can have them stop, and, you know, you stop here, whatever. Just be mindful of being nice to them, right? Because you can have them stop in 3 or 4 places and they won't change the price on you. But if you're wasting their time when they're only making $6 on you, just be considerate and maybe throw them a nice fat tip, you know what I mean? Because any other taxi in the US, you know, they're charging, it's a combination of time and distance, right? If you're making them stop in 18 places, they're losing the opportunity to drive somewhere else, and hopefully you're considerate enough to think about how much time you had with them, and maybe, you know, throw them a bone here and there whenever you have them stop for you. I hate when people go to a country that's, you know, struggling economically compared to the country we're from, and then you still try to be cheap when you go there. Can't get behind that mindset, you know what I mean? To touch on the rental real quick before I finish that part, they have really weird cars here. Not weird, they have cars that are like Suzuki doesn't make cars in the US anymore, but they make tons of brand new 2026 cars in Nicaragua, right? Because it's a cheap, affordable car, and it's a market that will always need cheap, affordable cars, right? Kia, Suzuki, Hyundai all offer cars that you're not used to seeing in the US. So what that provides, the reason I mentioned this specifically, is that when you rent a car at Budget or any of these places, they have some ludicrously cheap options. If you know how to drive a manual and you don't mind a tiny car, and I mean tiny, this car, even a brand new one with 5,000 miles, is not exactly a Corolla, right? You can rent it for $9 a day. The last time I rented a car was $108 for 7 or 8 days. It was a manual Suzuki Alto, 2025. They inspected it thoroughly. Make sure you take your own pictures and videos of the car because they did the same thing, and there was a scratch on the vehicle that already had it. But you know how a scratch can be deep enough for you to get your nails in it? So the car was beautifully clean, and as I drove it for a week, dirt started piling up in the scratch. So on the pictures that they took, the scratch was barely visible. When I brought the car back, the scratch looks bigger and more pronounced because it's full of dirt and the car was white. But I said, they were trying to say, hey, you gotta pay for this. I took my video, my pictures, and I showed them the scratches there. It's just because the car had been hit before and it was like spray painted or whatever. So, and the guy was like, oh, okay. So he wasn't trying to scam me, but I mean, they're not making tons of money, right? So any opportunity to legally be able to get a couple bucks is they're gonna take it, right? So I don't blame them. I mean, we're doing so much better that I don't see any of these things as scammy or anything. I just think it's just a way of life, right? So make sure you take your own videos. Do not be the typical, North American texting and driving. Motorcycles cut in and out of you all day, breaking every law imaginable. And if you're in your phone the whole time, you're gonna hit somebody, and that can become a very serious situation. Not because of accident, you're covered, you're not gonna go to jail because you hit somebody and you had a little fender bender. It's very difficult to get a car there locally for most people. It's a huge sacrifice. So when they crash it, they're usually very, very stressed out because it's not like us where we can just, Progressive's gonna come and either give us a check or replace the car in a week or two. The process is a lot more convoluted, right? So just be patient driving, and if you happen to have a fender bender, just chill out, immediately call the cops. They may or may not come right away, but just chill out, always try to de-escalate. So yeah, the point of that is you can rent a vehicle as long as you don't have any preferences for like $100 for 10 days, 8 days. My current rental that I'm gonna have in May 7th or 8th, or May 7th I fly out, is $200. I decided to get a nicer car. Corolla, an automatic Corolla, so I can have a little bit more trunk because this time I'm going shopping to buy more stuff for my house that I have there. So I'm getting a Corolla, and it was $267 for a Corolla for 12 days. And then they have flat rate. I could rent that same Suzuki Alto if I wanted to from the first time I went. For $300 a month, I can have the card. So you can pay the rental fee indefinitely if you want to live there for a while and you want a hassle-free vehicle. Suzuki Alto is not one of those cars though that's fun to have for 2 or 3 years, unless if you have the ability to buy something else. The back windows are manual while the front windows were power, and it only had one speaker on the dash. That's it. Had Bluetooth, which blew my mind that it had Bluetooth, but then it was stripped down every other capacity. So in summary, renting a car is very simple. US, Canadian license works just fine. They can go from very cheap to you can rent up to like a Highlander for $700-800 like you would anywhere else. Everything can be done within a few feet of each other at the airport when you get off the plane. $10 visa, walk through, either get a taxi, rent a car, rent a bike. They have a shuttle to take you everywhere if you need to rent to the rental car places, and that's it. And just be careful driving down there. If you've driven in places like downtown Manhattan in the 80s and 90s, or in Philly your whole life, or in Puerto Rico and things like that, you probably get around just fine. Next is that Nicaragua is pretty walkable, officially and unofficially, right? There's sidewalks in most places. Just like in the US, as you get further out of the city, there's less sidewalks. That doesn't stop people from walking. That's why I say, officially and unofficially. Every road you're gonna go on, there's people walking on it. So you always be, cognizant of that. Something you run into is there's ordinances and zoning like it is in the US, but enforcement is flexible because there's just not a lot of people working these government jobs. The reason I bring that up is, for example, when I was in Catarina, which is a overlook, I was walking through the main street and looking at all the stores or whatever. Some people just extended their porch into the sidewalk. So you're walking on the sidewalk and then you gotta get off the sidewalk onto the street because somebody made their porch 4 feet longer and completely blocked the sidewalk. So it's walkable and non-walkable at the same time. And the further you leave the city, the further things are. But people walk all the time. You see people in bus stops. While they are official bus stops all over the country, people make their own bus stops because it can get tired of walking. You're dragging 8 bags from a store. You just stand somewhere, and the bus drivers will stop and pick you up pretty much anywhere you are. Or some other like basic inner city things that can happen on the bus. But so don't get on the bus with your Gucci earrings and your, diamond necklace and your iPhone 16 Pro Max, and then take a nap, right? Because you might have some stories to tell after that. So another thing is, some places charge you a slightly higher fee for tourists. Some of it is official. Sometimes it'll be like just tourist fee. You'll see the sign outside clearly posted, $2 to enter, $2.50 if you're a tourist. The difference is super negligible fee. It's almost like a tax for enjoying their land, and I'm good with it, right? Because they have the land, we go there, we enjoy it in ways that sometimes the locals can't even enjoy it, right? So I think it's more than fair that tourist fee is negligible. Like example, Catarina, which is an overlook near Masaya, where you can go high and look over the Laguna de Apoyo volcanic crater. It's beautiful. It was like 20 cordobas to enter, which ends up being like 15 cents. I went there 2 days in a row. The first day I went, my lady gave the money and the person never even looked at me, and I had cordobas. The next day I wanted to get rid of my last dollar, so I gave a dollar bill. The lady saw the dollar bill and said, "Oh, you're a tourist?" And then she charged me 30 cordobas instead of 20 cordobas, which is nothing. It's like the difference was like 2 pennies or 10 cents or whatever, I don't know. My number, I'm just throwing the numbers around, but 36.5 cordobas is a dollar. So, when someone's telling you, oh, it's 20 or 30 cordobas, it's literally pennies that are difference, right? Be prepared though, for some of the things you want to see and do to not be simple to access. You're like, oh, I'll rent a car and I'll go there. You might think renting a car is just the simplest option because it's so cheap, but there's instances where you'd rather be in a taxi with a local driver, and I'll explain now. You might go to a place that is a farm up a mountain. You take the GPS and it'll take you there, roughly. Maybe 8/10 of the way, there's no more road. And now you just gotta know where you're going through a muddy back, and you might have a piece of crap car and you're not gonna make it. Or it's not easy to find. So sometimes it's better just to if you're not going in a group or you can follow other people, sometimes it's just better to get a taxi driver to get you up there, or a tour guide, even if you have a car rented. So always research where you're going before you go there out of nowhere, because you could run into some weird, odd difficulties. Then there's pedidos ya. Pedidos ya, which translates to orders now, is a complete, I don't want to use the word ripoff, but it's an absolute visual exact replica of DoorDash. Super cheap. Even with food markups, it's super cheap. The last thing I want to touch on is airline prices. We all know that airline prices have almost tripled in the last 60 days or so. Not trying to get into it, that's just the fact of life. But it's gotten crazy. For example, Spirit, of all people, Spirit Airlines, who ironically is about to shut down, or if it hasn't already by the time you see this video. When I went in January 30th, 2026, I paid $269 round trip. The plane went Philly to Fort Lauderdale, Fort Lauderdale to Managua, and back. So 4 airplanes, round trip, $269. So Spirit not being an option makes other flights to Nicaragua and anywhere else go up, because now Spirit, being one of the cheaper flights, forces other airlines to be competitive. Now they only have to be competitive to the next cheapest airline. So my price one way this time around for May 7th was $670. So, and this morning I just bought my return flight, which was $672. So for $1,300, I just made the exact same trip that I made in January 30th for $269. Just keep that in mind when you're looking for flights to not just Nicaragua, but anywhere right now, So yeah, that's all I can think about that's useful. And I'll be happy to answer any other questions that I didn't think about. And I hope to slowly make this channel worth your time watching. And this time that I go on May 7th, I hope to make some videos that you guys are gonna enjoy. Thank you for watching.